right, welcome to this episode of the Brown Bag Podcast. We are so excited to be with you all of our listeners out there. I am here with Virginia Criswell and Pedro Reynoso, who are our new hosts for the Brown Bag Podcast, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. But per our usual, let's go ahead and start with what's giving you life these days.
That is Friday.
Yes.
That is my favorite day of the week. I look forward to Friday on Sunday night. So, about it.
It's always good to have that. Nice. Get over the hump and be headed to the weekend for sure. What about you, Pedro? What's giving you life?
Yeah, I second what Virginia said too, but I think just seeing the two of you, I think lately just reconnecting with folks, with colleagues and just feeling like some folks I haven't seen in a long time. So just making time really to reconnect with folks, just sit and be still and listen and share what we're all going through with all this noise. It's more than noise. I know it's not just noise, but yeah, and just not just colleagues, but even like in my house, we have our garden and just kind of reconnecting and spending time with some of the trees we've planted so far. So yeah, so those are the things, little things that definitely keep me grounded for sure.
Nice. I'll say what's been giving me life lately, which will be no surprise since I'm an English teacher, is reading. I've been really, really enjoying reading for myself lately. I just finished this book about winter and wintering and how to deal with the winters of your life as well as like seasonal winters, and just got a lot of, I feel like winter is always a season that I like, have a lot of trepidation around, but now I feel kind of like I'm looking forward to it after reading this book. So and then I've just of course been reading some fun romance novels too, so just getting to read for pleasure has been really nice, rather than kind of scroll my phone or, go on Instagram and look at all the bad news. It's been nice just to kind of cuddle up with a book lately and relax and just get to ponder new ideas too. So fun. So fun.
I gotta start doing more of that too. Like, I really got into, like, when I was younger, I loved reading.
Mm,
I absolutely loved it. And then just, how lifes and,
Mm.
getting married early and having kids and just all of that, like, I kind of got away from it. And so I've been wanting to just get back into reading more to get just a sense, because I would scroll my life away.
hmm
And so I do want to be better about that. So yes, I do have a couple of books I
Mm.
bought that I want to read them. So
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, I'm such a big proponent of the Libby app, because if you have this Libby app, you and a library card, you can like check out ebooks on the Libby app and read them on your phone. So I do a lot of that because I have like a big, I think there's a word for it. I don't know if it's like a book addiction, but like somebody would mention a book and I would just buy it. And I was just like spending so much money on books. It's like having jewelry or something. So I was like, let me fool with the library again. So I had to get this Libby app. And it's really helpful because I'll usually, if I hear about a book, I'll go on there first to see if they have it before I buy it. And then sometimes I end up just buying the book because I want to own it for myself after I read it. But it's a nice way to like just to read and have access right away too. It's very cool. Very, very cool. Well, today we're going to talk about this really powerful article called The Culture of Power by Paul Kivel. But before we do that, I thought it would be really great just for Virginia and Pedro to introduce themselves to our listeners and say a little bit more about who you are and what drew you to coming to be a host for the Brown Bag podcast. And sure, everybody wants to know.
Mm.
Either of you want to go first?
Do you want to go, Virginia?
can. So I work as a senior administrative assistant for academic pathways and student success. I'm over in Building 600. And so for me, like I've listened to the podcast like since y'all first started it
Mhm.
during the pandemic. Like I subscribe, so I get the notifications when
Ah.
yeah, when an episode comes out. And I'm always just so inspired by the work that y'all do in the CCEPG. And so anytime there's an opportunity for me to just kind of participate, like I love just that opportunity, right? Like I want to just to be a part of the work that's being done. Like I don't want to be one of those people that just kind of complain or just talk about it just to myself or to the people that I am close with. Like I want to actually be part of making change. So
Mm,
that's a part of the reason, kind of like why I want to be involved in the work and also to bring like a different perspective, like the classified perspective, right? I want to
mm,
just make sure that classified voices are just a present in the conversation as well.
mhm, mhm. Oh, that's so cool. So cool. I'm so glad that like you feel like there's a space for you too, within all the different projects that we're doing. And I know Virginia um was a co-facilitator for the Tending the Village event that we held at the beginning of the school year. So she got another opportunity to lead, which is amazing.
I'm still flying high from that. Like,
Oh.
such a dope experience.
Well, we're gonna do it again, so you get to have another dope experience. What about you, Pedro? What do you want to tell our listeners about you?
Yeah, no, Pedro Reynoso, my current role at the library, I'm the one of the outreach and instruction librarians. I feel like I've done so much work with you, Carmen. Started SIN, changing out social justice learning community on campus, and just a variety of other projects. And I mean, I listen to a lot of podcasts myself, and when you reached out and said, "Hey, would you want to be part of a podcast?" I was like, "What?" Like I really had to I just didn't feel like I could be part of the conversation. But I think just in thinking about our experiences working here at Chabot, this is like I think my 16th year, and having been involved in various projects, I just felt it was a good opportunity to be part of the conversation and just listen to what's also being shared here, and learn through the process as well. Yeah.
It's so funny to me that you say it's your 16th year because I feel like in my mind we started together, but we didn't. I mean, I think this is my 19th year. Next year will be 20 years. So I guess I was here just a few years before you. But in my mind, I'm like, we started together. I guess because we started sin together.
The way I remember is my oldest is turning 16, or they just turned 16, and when I started Chabot, we were pregnant with Nayela, so that's how
Oh, yeah, that's a good way to
a
remember.
reference point, like, oh, okay, so it's been 16 years. So that's how
Yeah.
I
That's a
remember.
long
But
time.
yeah, it's been a minute. Yes, they say. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm just so pleased that you two were, excited about being on the podcast. We've had Sandra Hinera that started off with Monique and I, and Sandra had to step back. And Monique was gone last year for a bit, and she will join us again in the spring. So she's still part of this podcast. And it's just always really nice to like have more voices from the campus to bring ideas about topics that we should be exploring, and also just to add your perspective on these topics. So thank you so much for being part of this. And I wondered, Virginia, because it was your idea to talk a little bit about this article, and if you wanted to say anything, just what this article was about, or like why it stood out to you, or yeah, kind of what it means to you.
I think with the culture of power, first it was the voice, right? This was coming from like a white male.
Mm.
So to have him kind of put it in his perspective and then just acknowledging his privilege, right? Like that was like, okay, like I like the kind of the perspective that he was coming from. But then just reading through it, like I know it was like pick a golden line, but I had to stop because I almost had the whole thing highlighted because it was just so many different things in there that really stood out to me. Just like
Mm.
thinking, you know, from a Black woman's perspective, like how I feel. Like he was able to kind of capture that, right? Like
Mm,
when I walk into a room, like depending on who is in that space, like how that makes me feel. Or
mm,
like he even mentioned like students, like when students are in spaces with whoever, like those of us that work here, like staff, like how does it make them feel? Like, and I think sometimes we need to think about that opposite perspective instead of just being stuck in how just or being oblivious to what others experience. I think
mhm.
that is what really kind of stood out to me. And then just like how does that work here at Chabot? Like how, like who, what is the culture of power? Like who holds the power also?
Yeah, that's so great. Well, let's get into it. Pedro, I know you had a chance to look at this reading. Were there any lines in it or any quotes, pieces that really stood out to you?
Yeah, no, I think that, and just to add to what Virginia was saying, I think that just scanning through the article and reading the article right away, it made me think about kind of a theme that came up a lot was the kind of the power dynamics, right? That
Mhm.
sometimes, though I'll speak, from my positionality in terms of being I could be part of the in group as a cisgender male, someone with a college degree and an adult, while at the same time I could also be part of you know, a, the group at the margins, right? And how do we kind of navigate that? That really made me think about that kind of
Yeah,
tension that exists, while we're at Chabot, and really being mindful of that. And I think that I appreciate the reading, Virginia, because I think it really makes us think about the spaces that we enter or the spaces that we create for our students. I'm thinking about the library. I'm thinking about, of course, the classroom. What decisions or what are we doing to making sure that it is a welcoming space? But we can go into that. But I think that the one quote you did ask me for a quote, and the
yeah.
quote that really jumped at me was it was towards the end. It says the problem with a culture of power is that it reinforces the prevailing hierarchy. Yeah, so I'll leave it at that. That was kind of like how are we, because we are part of these institutions, and how are we kind of reinforcing that by what we do or don't do in certain
Mm.
spaces. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's so true. That's so true. I know this quote for me that really stood out. I think it's on like the second to last page, or he starts talking about class. And he says, without an understanding of how class limits people's ability to participate in organizations, a group may end up with a remarkably diverse group of middle class participants. Those who are homeless, poor, single parents, working two jobs, or poorly educated. And many people fall into more than one of these categories, often are unable to attend meetings or events because they cannot afford the time, the fees, the childcare, or the energy. When they do attend, they may feel unwelcome because they have not participated previously, because they do not speak the language or jargon of the organizers, or because they are unfamiliar or uncomfortable with the middle class values and styles of the group.
Mm,
And I feel like just that, to me, like that last line about just being unfamiliar or uncomfortable with the middle class values and styles of the group, like, I don't think people really know how challenging it is, those middle class values and styles. And like, we just really think that's how it is or how it has to be, just kind of, to me, like sometimes there's a blandness or formality or a staleness that just represents that middle class, or like an overly politeness, or like, you just like, is this, are you real or are you not real? And that,
mm,
or just not being very connected to people in a real way. And I think
mm,
too, just the piece around like language and jargon, and a lot of these things, when in CCPG we talk about the trauma of assimilation, and it's not just around whiteness, it's also around these middle class values that we're asking our students to kind of morph into being polite, understanding academic jargon, and I don't know, it just brings up a lot of questions for me around power and agency, for people.
mm.
What about you, Virginia? Did you have like a line that really stood out to you?
The one that you kind of went over, like I had that one highlighted. But then another one that I have too is whenever one group of people accumulates more wealth or more power than another group, the more powerful group creates an environment that places its members at the cultural center and other groups at the margins. People in the more powerful group, the in group, are accepted as the norm. So if you are in that group, it can be very hard for you to see the benefits you receive.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's just that hoarding of the power of or the hoarding of information,
Mm-hmm.
um, that puts others at a disadvantage. And then it's like, because you hoard it, it's just like, okay, well, I got it and you don't. So how about you just figure it out, right? And so I
Mm-hmm.
just think like that discourages people from just even wanting to learn, because it's just like, how do you learn?
Mm-hmm.
How do you become a part of the quote unquote in group? And it's like, do I even want to be a part of the in? You know what I mean? It's just like all of those questions. And then just how
Mm,
that kind of relates to like here at Chabot sometimes, right? Like who holds or who's the in group, right? Who has all of that information and that power, and who's at a disadvantage in that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
mm,
Yeah, I mean, I like just how it he says that the more powerful group creates an environment that places its members at the center, right? That like you have the power and it's just all
mm,
about you, right? And everybody else is like on the outside and you're not even aware of like the privileges and benefits that you may
mhm,
have just being a part of that powerful group. And then it becomes like if you're on the outside, it's like, well, what's wrong with you? You know, that you're not a part of us or that you don't fit in this way or that you haven't done it. And it's just, it's like totally divisive and dehumanizing, in a certain way. Right. Yeah. And just like you said, like that hoarding of information or knowing how to do things, knowing how to navigate situations and systems,
mm.
it really leaves people powerless.
Yeah, and I think what I gathered too is like the codes and the rules, that
Mm-hmm.
are embedded in this culture. And I think going back to
Mm-hmm.
your line, Carmen, about the class kind of rules that are, for folks in the in group, white folks may be oblivious to. And I think I can think of one example when I was reading the article, when I read that line was, I remember when I had graduated from library school and I went to my first American Library Association conference. It was a professional conference. And it was my first conference. I knew that I was in a profession that was predominantly white, but I
Yeah.
had no idea. I was not prepared to go to a conference where it was just so like, it's culture shock. And I just felt like, though I may have had a degree by then, I was, part of the professional community. There was so many rules and codes that I was not aware of. And of course, I was the minority as a person of color. So that to me also felt
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I was just glad that there were associations like there's a Hispanic caucus, a Black caucus that reached out to professionals of color. But that was one example, and I wonder if there's examples that maybe Carmen, Virginia, that where you have been in spaces where you feel like, man, this is like the class rules and codes was so apparent that makes you feel marginalized. But it could be at your book too. I don't know. Yeah.
mhm. I think like when I very first started working here, I felt I felt like an outsider.
Mm.
Um, it was like I didn't work in education prior to coming here. And so like all the different committees and this and that, like I'm nosy. I say that all the time. Like I'm nosy. So I was just attending stuff because I was like, well, ooh, what's this? Or what's this? Or what's this? Right. Um, and aside from like my classified colleagues that really embraced me and took me in and were like teaching me the ropes and showing me what's what. But when I would attend meetings, I didn't feel accepted into the group. Like I didn't
Mm.
feel like I belonged. And then the even crazier part about that is because I look so young, people thought I was a student.
Mm.
And so I felt like they ignored me even more sometimes because they thought I was a student. And so they weren't friendly, they weren't welcoming. Like they
Mm,
would just kind of look at me like I did not feel accepted. And then to know that some like they thought I was a student, it was even like, well, dang, like what's going on here? And so once they were like, oh, you work here, then it was like some people would be more kind of accepting to me, like,
Mm,
oh, okay, well, but it was like, well, when you thought I was a student, like you were willing to treat me other because I didn't belong.
mm,
Um, and just like all the jargon and like I would just write down like what does that mean? Like what are these acronyms? What is that? Like I don't know what any of this means. And then it's like how do I ask? Like in this room full of, administrators or faculty members and sometimes maybe being the only classified in there and not really understanding like the power dynamic that was here originally. I
yeah.
didn't again, I didn't come from education. Like I didn't work in education, so I didn't understand that power dynamic, but then you feel it
Mm,
like not even understanding it, but still feel it in the room. Like, can I ask the question of, you know, whatever the acronym is, like, what does that mean? So I would have to write it down and then go ask someone later, like, what does this mean? Like, what? And so it did feel very uncomfortable and not necessarily welcoming.
mhm.
Mm.
Yeah, I could totally understand that. I
So,
mean, those acronyms are so they're so hard to learn, and I still don't understand them. And I've been here almost 20 years, it's very that jargon, right? It's that academic jargon. And like if you don't understand it, it's can be so marginalizing. You can just feel so on the outside. Yeah, and I wonder too, just more about like how does this culture of power play out at Chabot? I mean, you talked a lot about that, Virginia, and what your experiences have were when you first started. And yeah, I just wonder how does this play out in Chabot? Where do we experience the culture of power? And I feel like I definitely felt like that a lot more when I started at Chabot, like just feeling like I didn't know how to navigate this institution and was trying to learn so much about like the jargon we spoke about. And also for me, like I have a background in teaching and I have like a master's in English and creative writing, but I think like the composition piece of teaching English, I felt very nervous about and, really had to learn a lot. So I definitely had that like what it's not stereotype threat, but that like what is that thing called?
oh,
Imposter
imposter
syndrome,
syndrome.
imposter
Yeah.
syndrome, right? For a long, long time. And sometimes still I'm like,
Mhm.
oh. I feel like that was a big piece. And when I started, it wasn't as diverse as it is now. It's still not where it needs to be, but there wasn't a lot of diversity at Chabot. So it just felt like dealing with a lot of racism. I mean, people would say that to me too, Virginia, when I first started. Oh, you're a student. You look like a student. You look like a student. And I don't know if the white folks that started the same as me, that were the same age, got that as much as I
Mm.
did. And that was really, really, really hard. It felt very much like I was black and young looking. And so I was kind of not, I don't know, I felt on the outside a lot for sure. But I feel like now because of being here for so long and like doing these big projects that I don't feel as I don't know if that's true. I think I just feel I don't feel empowered and I definitely feel discouraged a lot, about the way things are set up here. And I don't feel like there's anything I can do to change some of those things. I don't know. What about you, Pedro? How do you feel like the culture of power plays out here?
Yeah, Chabot. Yeah, that's a good question. I think that Virginia talked about this already, but the kind of who holds the information. I think information
Mm-hmm.
sometimes is power in terms of how some decisions are made or who has access to information that could influence decisions. You have to be in the right room, in the right space, and sometimes that excludes maybe classified professionals. It can exclude faculty. So how do we have a, if you want to call it, even a playing field in terms of access to information that could help inform some of the decisions when it comes to, yeah, I mean, from hiring to, I mean, so many different decisions that we're involved in at a daily basis. But I think that one thing that's current and I think in people's minds, I think, as we all know, there was the campus-wide
Mm.
satisfaction survey. And though some of the results were kind of critical of admin.
Of
One of the
administrators?
things that was also shared at one of the meetings. Yeah, you have administrators, but also the survey also showed that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Virginia, but that classified professionals also felt like faculty, could do better in terms of, relating to classified professionals. So I think that, to me, that spoke about also the privilege that we faculty members have when we walk into a space, a meeting, and how do we make sure that we are inclusive in terms of making sure that, all voices are heard, that it's not so faculty driven. So I think, to me, it's that reminder, and how do we find ways to kind of disrupt that status quo. I mean, I think that even simple things as reading like the land acknowledgement at some meetings, I think that's a gain, that's a win. I think it does change, kind of put folks like, hey, that we are situated on a lonely land. So some of the things that came to mind when thinking about how does it play out at Chabot. Those are some of the thoughts that came to mind. Yeah.
Yeah.
And also like you were mentioning, Pedro, just feeling from like one thing that Classified kind of expressed in the survey was just feeling discriminated against because we're classified, which I mean, it's like we all work here, right? We're all a part of like this same machine. Like we need all parts to really function. Like it feeds back into that like power of us and not feeling like this classified. We're just here to be like the worker bees. We're just here to just do like not necessarily just do the work because we're all here to do the work, but it's like when you think about all hands on deck, a lot of times it's classified. We mean your hands on deck. Like the rest of us, we don't necessarily have to do that type of work, but it's like we're all here to support the students. And so that just feeling that like not included in like maybe more decision making. I think that like that's kind of the feeling, right? Like sometimes feeling like, including classified in the conversation, we're checking that box. So we included them, we invited them to come. Like we didn't hear what you said, but you were here. So that's good enough, right? So just feeling like, are we really here to help make decisions? Like that's what we want to be a part of.
Yeah, and decision making is power, right? Like if you get to decide, how money is spent or who gets hired, or that's power, right? And I think that, I would say that faculty feel discouraged about that as well, being on these shared governance committees and you're just asked to give a recommendation, but in the end, our senior leadership will decide whatever they want to. And I just, it feels like, yeah, go do the work, go to a meeting, look at these program reviews, talk about it, and then send us a list of what you recommend. So it's kind of similar of like doing all that work, but not really having your thinking taken seriously if somebody can just say, no. And I feel like it's the same sometimes being on a hiring committee, that you'll do all this work, going through all that screening, interview questions, interview people. And then in the end, the people at that second level decide. And there's so much strategizing that we have to do to like try to make sure that what we want is recognized and thought about. And I don't know. I guess that was my other question, is just like, how do we change this? How do we challenge this culture of power? And I'm especially interested, Virginia, when you were saying just how classified feel discriminated against, and just the stuff that came up between classified and faculty, right? Like, what can we do to kind of bridge those gaps?
I think the frustrating part in that is, like you said, like if senior leadership, if they're going to do what they want to do, regardless, it just feels like you said, like, how do you change that? Like, I think in a lot of aspects, I think if, classified and faculty, if we could just be more collaborative in lifting one another's voices up. And maybe that could be something that can help us, not seeing ourselves as on opposite ends, or thinking that one voice is better or one voice is louder than another one. Like, like a cohesive, like one voice on a lot of our, our questions, our concerns, our issues. I think at the end of the day, like we have very similar issues, I think, but if we could see ourselves as equals in that, like you want your voice heard, we want our voices heard as well, and just understanding that and just kind of being more supportive of one another, like that can maybe help us to maybe make all of our voices louder so that we can be heard. Because I think, and maybe we don't we don't feel that we could do that. But I feel like if you're loud enough, at some point, you'll have no choice but to hear us.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. Like just I like that thought about just lifting each other's voices up more, right? Yeah.
No, yeah. And I think I was just listening and thinking like, yeah, how do we even start? And I think that for me, it's I mean, maybe lately I've been reading a lot about listening, but I almost feel like there has to be some sort of listening session where like having a safe space where faculty just sit and listen. Like if there were an opportunity for, and this is just thinking out loud here, but like where we sit and listen to classified professionals and just say, what is it, that, can we do better? And how can we, again, help uplift everybody's voices? So I think that creating the safe spaces, creating the language like we're doing right now and calling, the culture of power, I think that, those sort of things that come to mind because I feel like it's about seeing each other's humanity and contributions as key members of Chabot. So I think that I don't know if everybody sees that, right? So I think almost like, yeah, listening is the first step, kind of.
But I wonder, Virginia, if there were like some, I don't know, just behaviors, specific behaviors that you notice with faculty towards classified, like being talked down to or being, ordered. I don't know, just if there was any kind of examples, just kind of for our listeners, because I think people may feel like they may not even know they're doing it. And so maybe if we're able to kind of say like, don't do this or, think about talking like that or I don't know.
So it is the talking down too. There's bullying. There's
From faculty to classify like bullying? Really?
yeah, like bullying, like
Wow.
like sometimes like verbal, like just outright just saying very mean things. Or just the posturing or just also understanding sometimes that faculty aren't our supervisors, right? Just feeling like, no, you have to listen to me. You do what I tell you to do. And sometimes saying that, like that, there's very real examples of things that, classify have experienced from other faculty members or, deeming maybe the faculty voice as more important than the classified voice, right? Or, we're the practitioner. So, it's our decision. And we understand that. Like, classified do something very different than faculty. Like faculty are in the classroom, like we understand that there's a difference in what we do, but understanding that our contributions are just as important. I think sometimes our contribution isn't deemed as important.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I mean, it's like you said earlier, we're all here at the college to support our students, in different ways, and we all have a role to play, and it is interesting too that like, I don't know if I should say this, but like faculty, like we are in the classroom with our students, and so yeah, maybe there is like posturing with classified, but I wonder why we don't have that same posturing with administrators, right? Because we are the ones in the classroom with the students on the day-to-day doing that day-to-day work that we're being managed to do, but we're the ones. I mean, I think probably faculty are maybe a little more aloof with with administrators, but it is an interesting. And I think sometimes when people are feeling feeling oppressed, they like take it out on people and people that they might see as lower in the hierarchy, so they're kind of acting out. But I think that you're so right in the sense of like, we're all in this together. And it's also like, what do you want your legacy to be? Like, who do you want to be known as? You want to be known as someone that bullies classified on campus? Like, that's not a good look, right? That's not cool. Yeah, it's really helpful to just hear, what's happening on the ground. And I think good for people who are listening to just check themselves a bit. So anything else that you all want to say about the culture of power or just power dynamics here on our campus?
I mean, just to go back to something you mentioned, Carmen, about I think the word trauma you may have used about the trauma of assimilation.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's real. And I think I also want to name that. I think that recently I've been reading a lot about this concept of fawning, trauma response, which, it's unconscious kind of shape shifting, where you kind of morph your own personality and opinions to kind of please others. And it goes back to the power dynamic. And I think that as folks of color, I think that's real. And having these conversations, I think, are helpful. And I also, for me, what's been helpful is to kind of pause when I'm in spaces where I feel like, am I doing some fawning here to kind of, go with the flow, or am I kind of speaking up and making sure that my voice is heard? So there's so many layers. And I just think that I'm so also appreciative for inviting us and having this conversation, because
Yeah, I mean, it makes me realize too, just like how intentional we need to be when we go into a space. It's like we're all busy and moving so fast that sometimes we might come into a space and just like be so unaware, and like dominate or, be rude, or and like just being able to just take a second with yourself and like just think about like who you're with and, who's in that space and how you want to treat people. I think is like so essential in trying to make this change. And I'm not really that good at that, of just pausing for a second and thinking about the space. And it's definitely something that we all could practice a bit. Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
All right. Well, were you going to say something, Virginia?
And it's something else that like I learned from like the work of CCEPG, right? And how this kind of ties into the culture of power. Like as you were talking about, sometimes like we all may not necessarily think about how we show up in spaces, but it also goes back to like the system of white supremacy and how like we're always feel like we are always on, something's always urgent, it's always right. So you just get to that like the rat race of like, oh my God, to the next thing, to the next thing, to the next thing. And I think like that's done here, like this sense of urgency all the time. The right now, it has to be perfect, it has to be this, but just really taking that time to just slow down, to take a breath and just really kind of just pause for a second to really center ourselves. I think we all need to do that. I think as we just move, go, 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 do, it's like just having that moment of just, okay, let me take a moment to be mindful. Because it's like the work is going to be there. It's not going nowhere. So
Yeah. I'm so glad you brought up the white supremacy culture and that sense of urgency, right? And it is so pervasive in these institutions. We're always up against it. And sometimes, I mean, I don't know too, after I've been here for so long, I'm like, ain't none of this stuff urgent. It is not as urgent as people act like it's, and everything's gonna be all right, like it's fine, Very true. Well, let's go ahead and head towards our exit ticket. That was such a great conversation. And so do you all have, for our exit ticket, we always do like recommendations, and do you have anything you want to recommend to our listeners? It can be connected to this topic or not. It can just be something you're into right now that you think people should check out.
How I mentioned the whole concept of fawning, which is kind of me. I'm reading this book. It's titled "Are You Mad at Me?" Meg Josen Henson, I think it's the name. But the title is "Are You Mad at Me?" And it's this whole thing about we may think that folks are mad at us or something, or and we have to shapeshift our behavior, but it's usually to some sort of status quo. So that to me, it's given me a lot of pause, a lot of reflection, and thinking about, like you said, how do we come into some of these, how we show up in some of these spaces. So, yeah,
that's such a good recommendation. I'm going to look it up. Are You Mad at Me? Really good. I know I'm always feeling like everybody hates me, so it's good. Maybe it's not them. Maybe it's my mind frame. Think about that, my mindset.
Well, that's the thing. Sometimes we internalize it. We think it's us and there's something wrong with me, but it's not us, you know?
Yeah, and people always have stuff going on, it's
Yeah.
like nobody's really tripping off of you, but it's
Yeah.
probably some stuff that happened early as
Mm-hmm.
early kid stuff that
For sure.
but what about you, Virginia? You got a recommendation for our listeners?
To take a nap.
She's all about the break.
I'm all about the break. I love to sleep. I love it. And so, like, if I could give me a good nap in, oh, I love it. So I would just suggest just take a nap.
Like,
If you're tired, then go and take a nap. Okay, I hear that. I'm not a very good napper. I can't really ever just close my eyes and rest. I have to like listen to like a meditation podcast or something. But I try because I believe in them too. I know it's good. Have you've heard of that rest is resistance movement?
Yes.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's really good.
And that's true.
Well, I would say my recommendation, since I was reading this book, Wintering, is basically be like a squirrel and start like hiding your nuts, start preparing for the winter now, get a new sweater, get your thermals, your boots. That's one of the recommendations for for enjoying winter is just making sure you have the right gear. So it makes I'm just like constantly cold. So I'm like, okay, I gotta get some more sweaters. Maybe I need some like thin type of leggings and, long sleeve shirts. But I'm like, to, embrace the cold by preparing for it. So
Mm-hmm.
that's what I recommend. Even though I know it doesn't get hella cold here, but it gets Cali cold, and that's cold to me.
Mm-hmm.
that's true.
Well, thank you too for joining and being a part of the podcast. And I'm excited about all that we're going to do this season.
Thank you, Carmen, Virginia.